Hello, this is Anne. Welcome to day 2 of the presentation, Ignite Your Power. Use anger as a fuel to transform, to make changes for growth. This is a recording after the official recording, because unfortunately, in that recording, and during that time, there was so much interference. People hacked in on it, and I don't know how they did it, but it was so disturbing that people left, and there were all kinds of rude sounds coming through. So rather than trying to do something about that original, I'm going to spend the time to go through the whole presentation without the participation that would ordinarily take place. So it'll be shorter, but hopefully it will be as beneficial and less disruptive for sure. So let me first find a way of sharing my screen and begin that way. All right. I needed to find my screen share and get the right slides up. So that explains that. Pause in technical difficulties. So here is where I will begin the official presentation about igniting your power. Use anger as fuel for growth, day 2. I did not fix the slide because it says ignite the power rather than your power. And this is an example of my being perfectly imperfect. I've given up perfectionism, and hopefully there will not be too many mistakes in this presentation, but I left that in to introduce the concept of I make mistakes, and this will not be a perfect presentation. So welcome to day 2. I want to begin by creating a safe place, and in a group, it was particularly important. In a kind of presentation like this, I want to also create a safe place for you to feel that together, as you are listening and as I'm presenting, that we're connected in a safe place so that the best can happen. And in the original presentation, I talked about confidentiality because people's names and faces would be on the video. In fact, yesterday's video needs to be edited, so I will work on getting that edited, but this will be presented first. So if you attended the first day or saw the recording, then happily play this one. But for those who didn't, I will get the other one edited properly. And that's what we had to do with confidentiality to make sure that any material that someone didn't want shared would not be shared. I want to offer this quotation from Wayne Dyer, who talks about gratitude. Gratitude is a sacred place where you allow and know that a greater force, a force greater than your ego, is always at work and always available. And that's how gratitude is. When you can begin to think about all the things you're thankful for, you enter a different place. So when you ever have a stressful thought or situation, if you can find a place of gratitude, you will move from that limited struggling place to a place where you can work with all your potential. So that's the beginning. I am grateful for your presence, even if it is not in person. And by the way, I appreciated everyone who attended, who left when things got rough, because your presence were, was very important to me. And to the degree that you participated, I appreciate it. For those of you who don't know my official bio, it goes something like this. In 1981, I earned my PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Maine. I then began a postdoctorate internship in the Department of Psychiatry at UC Berkeley. That began my work with clients, which continued when I was hired as a counseling psychology at UC Berkeley's Counseling Center. So for over 40 years, I have worked with clients. And after I retired from UC Berkeley, I had the time to explore for more things in personal development, more things in healing. And all the while while I was exploring, I didn't realize that I was trying to find answers. So what I explored were, among other things, Psyche, matrix energetics, theta healing. I trained with Brian Weiss in past life regression. I also went 4 years to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing and am certified as a healing science practitioner. Most recently, 5 or 6 years ago, I attended MAP, M-A-P, Make Anything Possible, a platform that offers incredible process and methods to work with the subconscious. And the last thing is I authored a book published in 2019 called Listen to the Cries of Your Heart, which I can tell you a bit about later. Now, the story that I share today, my real story behind the bio, is different from yesterday's. This one I can begin by saying, when I was about 7 years old, I was molested by the neighbor boy. So I looked into the night skies and said, "Where are you, God?" Now, this, looking back, seems strange to me because I was in a Buddhist Shinto home where there's no concept of God. But something in my soul must have reached up, knowing that I needed to be connected to God, divinity. And off and on through the years, I explored various forms of religion. As a teenager, I spent a lot of years with a fundamentalist Christian group. Sometime in my 20s, I spent a bit of time with an Indian guru. And then family and career took off to occupy my time. And it was not until my senior year in the Barbara Brennan School that the topic of our relationship to God returned. And I remember saying, "Oh, this is really important to me." But then life took over and I forgot about it. I was leading a life of conformity and using my intellect as my main resource. Consequently, I got my degrees, and it was not until 10 years ago the intuition broke through my intellect to give me the phrase, listen to the cries of your heart, which began my own personal journey to heal my heart, which the book describes as a way of hearing for the first time what my heart had to say. And I created an inner child method through that process. 5 years later, intuition again intervened to tell me that I needed to learn MAP, make anything possible, a method that uses the subconscious train to treat healing trauma parts from childhood wounds. Since then, through other ways, I have learned that intuition was really the voice of the divine speaking to me. And now that I have been led through the One with God books to connect to the voice of awakening, I know that my intuition is the divine aspect of me. And because of the One with God books, I feel I have the connection that I yearn for when I spoke up as a 7-year-old. So that's the real story behind the surface and why I come to you today, not lost and confused as I was before, that I didn't appear on the surface, but I have dealt with the parts that were lost and confused to I feel found and whole and knowing as much of my true self at this point as I can. No, but I am a work in progress. So that's the story I wanted to share with you about um, the outside me and the inside me. So I would have asked before this slide, say yes in the chat if you know what it feels like to be lost and confused. Put a yes in the chat if you know what it feels like to be successful on the outside and still feel like you're missing something. Put a yes in the chat if you've been a seeker, looking for answers and maybe not even knowing what the question is, but you just keep on seeking, investing time and money into books and courses, YouTube videos and podcasts, but still not finding the answer. I come to you today and yesterday wanting to share you the keys to how I found the answers that may shorten your path to wholeness, to your truth, to your purpose, to clarity. So yesterday we covered section 1, your first language of anger, which is all about looking in your childhood experience, how anger was expressed and felt in your family, recalling usually an angry father. And oftentimes, if you're a male, being the target of the anger, so you got beat up. Or maybe seeing your father beat up your mother. Whatever the situation was, it was very abusive, and anger was very negative to you. The second section was how you relate to anger now. So it provided an opportunity for you to figure out whether you're explosively angry or you have suppressed and buried anger like I did. Or anger feels so negative to you that if you feel anything in yourself that feels like anger, you walk away from it. Or if you feel the anger in somebody else, you also walk away. If not physically, emotionally, you do. You don't want to be present. So it's an opportunity for you to assess how you handle anger. In section 3, I offer an emotional reset, a way of looking at anger not as something bad, but something to be embraced, because anger is no from the heart. It's a message from the heart that's saying what is happening now does not meet my needs. In fact, it hurts. And my needs are basically to feel safe, to be seen, to be understood, to be cared for, and fundamentally to be loved and accepted. So when you can see that that is the function or could be the function of anger, you can begin to look at it differently. Anger in the past, anger in the present. And take the time to say, what does this know about? What does my heart need instead? So that's the emotional reset that I described yesterday. For today, the task is looking at anger and the inner child's wounds. The second section is anger and the trauma parts, how the trauma parts have survival patterns and what that means. And finally, moving toward your original essence by working with the inner child to get to the undefended heart. All the inner children created are trauma parts that are about survival. They create like a brick wall around your heart to protect it from further hurt. So as you heal the trauma parts, the wall begins to dissipate, allowing you to feel your undefended heart, your original heart, where you're connected to clarity, peace, purpose, your power. You're connected to love, the source of love. And that's the place I think we all want to be. So that's the agenda for today. So section 1 is anger and of the inner child and the inner child. So what do we know about the inner child? Well, there are triggers that are about sadness, anger, and fear. There are intense reactions, so that if you're suddenly filled with anger, that's touching an inner child wound, or suddenly very fearful that you're frozen, even paralyzed to act. That's a sign of an inner child. Or bursting into tears is a trigger. Another expression of a trigger is the chronic presence of any of these feelings. So I want to spend a bit of time talking about the power of anger. The source of emotions come from childhood wounds that hurt you, that pained you, that made you angry or afraid or sad. When you were hurt in that way by what people said to you, how they acted with you, your experience, beliefs were created, such as, I'm not good enough, I am alone, I am to blame, and patterns or strategies like people pleasing, overachieving, perfectionism, super self reliance. So the beliefs, not good enough, anything that I just described and is listed here, are not true. They limit you, but they were created out of the experiences that you had. So if you were treated badly by your father, for example, the idea was created, I'm not good. That's why I'm getting punished. Or if you felt ignored in childhood, you felt very alone. And inside, you feel like, no one cares about me. I'm alone in my world. Or if something negative happened, you blame yourself for it. Such are the beliefs that are created. And patterns that were also created are people pleasing, where you're so focused on keeping any negative things away from you that you're constantly looking to please people, to make sure you don't disturb them. Or another strategy is overachieving, believing if you accomplished enough, you were out of reach, everyone would admire you, and you were safe by all the achievement that you could create. Or you decide you need to be perfect in as many ways as you can. Or to become just self-reliant, not depend on anybody. Now, what I want to focus on is how anger operates in this whole system. Anger, if you've ever really feel it in your body, emotionally, how it feels, there's a lot of energy there. And it's very uncomfortable. And it's very natural to say mean things because it hurts. And even if you don't express it, what caused the anger still hurts inside. So, anger arises out of pain and is usually expressed to cause pain. So, when you see a father being angry with you, it's some expression in him of stored anger. He became angry because he was hurt. And because it was stored and it's something that you did make him angry, that is what is gets expressed, cause you pain. Another point about anger, the energy of anger is huge and it's powerful, whether it's expressed or buried. When you see violent people, the energy they have in what they break and attack is huge. We're all human beings, and the energy of anger is still huge and powerful. Anger can also be brought within. So instead of expressing the hurt outwardly, you blame yourself, or you can blame others. But blaming others is a sort of a substitute. It doesn't really effectively take care of the pain that you feel. And depression can also be seen as anger turned inward, that the anger is so much, it needs to be contained and buried. And that's where you lose life energy. So anger is a very important emotion to consider. Now, this is an opportunity, if you were in the live session, to say yes in the chat. If you have these beliefs, I'm not good enough, I am alone, it's all my fault, I am unlovable, I am not safe. These are the beliefs that we often carry. So look at each of them and see how many of these you can claim. That when you are still with yourself, do you feel unsafe? Do you feel unlovable? When anything bad happens, do you think it's your fault? And when we are still with yourself, do you feel you're alone? That you're not good enough? So we develop survival patterns that cage you, like people pleasing, overachieving, perfectionism, super self-reliant, making sure that you don't bother anybody, you make them as happy as you can. All the attention on others and pleasing. Another survival pattern is overachieving. Figure when you become important enough, if I have enough credential, enough money, enough power, then you will be safe. Or being perfect. If you're perfect, you believe that you're at the top. No one can bring you down. You're safe. Or become super self-reliant, where you depend only on yourself. You don't have to have others disappoint and fail you so that you go down with their failures. These are ways in which you create patterns to survive. But each of these don't deal with the wounds that you have. They cover the wounds and make you feel like you're doing all right in the world. But if you can own up to any one of these or several, then you know that there's something to look at about what are the wounds that they're trying to cover over. So when you follow survival patterns, as I described in the earlier slide, you will limit your expression. You don't say your truth or what you think because you're afraid of the consequences. You're afraid of rejection. Or these patterns of people pleasing, of perfectionism, are intense. They can keep you stressed and distressed. They take a lot of energy. Or you're overwhelmed and exhausted trying to keep up with all the things you feel you need to do. And part of these survival patterns is not asking for help, because you have the idea of asking for help is a sign of weakness, and you can't afford to look weak. And oftentimes you become distrustful of other people's work. When you do the work, you can trust yourself. And because you've been let down in early life, you're not willing to trust others. Or you can't take in compliments, praise, and awards because you've got your heart protected. You can't open yourself up to anything like that because they may not really be of value. So that's the end of section 2. Section 3 is about the truth and power of your innocence and essence. So let's see what the slide says. All right, there are conscious and less conscious ways in which to get to a more positive place. So if you know that you get discouraged easily, or you feel without energy, or you feel driven, anything like that, you might try affirmations to change your beliefs and patterns, such as, I'm going to change my belief that I'm good enough, or my pattern of people pleasing. So you can write all kinds of affirmations supporting a change in belief or pattern and stick them all over the place. Because there are conscious efforts to change, it takes a long time, maybe 6 weeks or more. And should you forget and lapse into the opposite belief, do you start over? Attempting to change what is unconscious or subconscious through conscious means is full of effort and takes a long time. And I wouldn't say this if I didn't have an alternative, of course. Mindset changes are often suggested, where you change from a negative way of looking at things to the positive way. But again, these are done on a conscious level. And it takes a long time for what is conscious to get imprinted to the unconscious. And of course, I have a better way. So there are ways to connect with the inner child that are more conscious. There are many, many suggestions in YouTube, online, where you might journal and try to connect with the inner child in that way. Or you might listen to meditations and attempt to connect with the inner child. However, because the inner child and all of its belief are in the unconscious, the subconscious, these conscious efforts rarely penetrate to affect what is well formed in the unconscious. All the pains that led to the inner child, and all the beliefs that constitute and belong to the inner child, and all the patterns, adaptive patterns, survival patterns, are in the subconscious. So conscious efforts to connect with the inner child are not as effective as you would like them to be. And I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't have a more effective way. I want to describe a way of connecting with the inner child that I write about in my book, Listen to the Cries of Your Heart. This is the inner child process. It's connecting the adult you, moving to be with the child you, where essentially you meet her or his questions, whether am I good? Am I loved? Am I safe? So I will spend this time right now to go through an inner child process. And because it's part of this recording, you might just check to see where you are in terms of time, so you can go back to it and use it whenever you need to. So the process begins this way. Close your eyes and begin paying attention to your breathing. Feeling the air that is your breath moving in your body. Because when you focus on your breath this way, the next breath becomes deeper. And you can feel your abdomen expand more and drop even more, bringing in softness to tight muscles in your jaw, your neck, your shoulder, your back, and also bringing relaxation into the thinking mind that is usually alert, active, and defensive. So the relaxation allows for imagination, the door to imagination to be opened. So see yourself moving into the place of imagination, which can be like stepping out into being under the sunlit, starlit sky, where you see infinite space. I see the space of imagination in that way. And if you can't, pretend that you can. Make it up. And in this space, I want you to call for a child between the ages of 1 to 5, so you can meet with her, because she feels or he feels very alone, confused, hurting, feels there is no one there for the child. So gently, quietly approach the child and slowly make yourself known to the child with the energy of being very attentive and present to the child, taking in the looks, the expression, the stance, what the child is wearing on her or his feet as well. And let the child know that you are the adult, her or his adult from the future, to be with him or her. You come because you care and want to be with this child. You want to understand the child's heart, the child's experiences, and most of all, you want to know what the child needs from you. A hug, a holding, to get a glimpse of what a child is experiencing, what hurts, what seems overwhelming. So I'll be quiet for a bit of time for you to build up a rapport with your child so that your child can feel your presence and your compassion, your caring, until you sense a relaxation and acceptance of what you bring and who you are, to change your sense of being totally alone, not understood, not seen. Her needs or his needs not being met, and so forth. And for you to convey that none of the experiences the child has is the fault of the child. This is the way human life is too often experienced, where you feel neglected, ignored, abused, misunderstood, not seen, not heard, etc. You want to be with those experiences of the child and to ask, what can I do for you? So I'll be silent for about a minute for you to connect and experience this child. This time with your child, you can return to any time. Let the child know to signal when the child needs your presence in this way. And you can ask for a video from me, a video tape of the inner child process, so you can use this. So take a few deep breaths to return to this present moment. And slowly open your eyes to continue this presentation. This is the inner child process that I introduce in my book. And because it happens in the place of imagination, it's not quite conscious. It blends into the area of hypnosis, like the process I'm going to talk about next. So it is one process that I use in the inner child work that I provide. And here in the workshop, I asked people to um, describe what it was like to try to communicate with this child and to feel the child's heart, what the child needed from you. So you might now just jot all of these to record your experience with the inner child. Or make a note to yourself to do that. We have just moved from an experience where I invited you to move into a not particularly solid conscious place, but one that was mixed with other elements, conscious as well as subconscious. This is a transition. What I want to do next is to concentrate on the power of the subconscious. As you can see from this illustration, the conscious mind is a small percentage of what influences you, what you see, what you think, what you hear. Everything in your present experience right now is basically coming from the consciousness that you have. But 95% that is influencing all your experience, everyone's experience, comes from the subconscious mind. And that is crucially important because this means that what we have in any moment, in every day, in our current life, is a result of what's subconscious. So if there are things that we don't like, we need to somehow access the subconscious because it programs what is before you. And this is particularly important in terms of the inner child work that we've been focusing on because limiting beliefs and the patterns that you've had your whole life are like every other habit of how you shower, how you eat, all your experiences, how you walk, how you laugh, all of that, as well as your physiological processes, all come from the subconscious mind. And while we're grateful for the fact that we don't have to think usually to breathe until we stop, and then we recognize that we've stopped and need to consciously breathe, but our heart beats without our attending to it for the most part. So we're grateful for what the subconscious mind does. But in terms of how it influences and create things in our current life that we want to change, that we don't like because they restrict us, limit our possibilities, get in the way of thriving, we need to find a way of working in the subconscious area of our experience. And I'm happy to have been trained in something called MAP, Make Anything Possible, which I've mentioned before. It is a system built or created by Dr. Gary A. Flint, a clinical psychologist who took on the most um, difficult patient populations, which were what, in common words, or split personality. People who were tortured in satanic rituals, for example. So they had parts split out that could take over the entire conscious life, and they had many parts. Dr. Flint used the opportunity of working with these patients to talk with their subconscious mind, and his book, The Theory and Practice of Personality, or something like that, is an explanation of all that he learned so that he provides all the background on how we can communicate with the subconscious mind and all the ways the memory works and so forth. Colette Stryker and her son Valentine, worked with Dr. Flint to create the MAP program. And the MAP program is designed to train the subconscious to become superconscious. And as you work with it, you realize that the subconscious train is a divine expression of ourselves. It is very powerful, all-knowing, and it can heal the trauma parts. It can heal the pain of childhood wounds that gave rise to the limited beliefs and strategies and so forth. So it's a very powerful method that can be found partly in with hypnosis and other systems, but this is a very clear, deep way of working to heal the damaged, broken heart. I want to supply the words of EJ, who had a map session with me. She says, I just want to thank you for the incredible map session yesterday. I feel so much better from 90 minutes than I have with years of therapy and deep personal work. I'm still in shock how quickly it works and how profound the change is. I want to keep going. Many, many thanks. And she is just one of those who have experienced in just one session so much deep work, so many issues affected and transformed. The next is a longer story. It's a woman who worked with me for at least 20 sessions. She was a very successful social media professional in her international education company. She came to me overwhelming and exhausted. And as I learned her story, I knew why. She had scripts that led her to be self-reliant and responsible for everyone in her life, her fellow employees, her bosses, in her family. her husband, who had been depressed for 3 years because he's been out of work, and her three thriving teenagers. Besides that, she had side gigs, filming documentaries, and a coaching business that she was certified to work in. And she tried to keep all of this going. So, in the middle course of working with her, she fell sick with pneumonia and was in bed for 4 weeks. Yet, in this time, she got out of bed to show up on a shoot because a documentary was being produced. Happily, in the course of working with her, she wrote to me and said, I need self-compassion, which means she turned around her priorities. She made herself, rather than all her responsibilities and people, the priority. And from that point on, she began to gain herself, who she was once her inner child parts were healed. And she came to a point where a while ago, she left her company and has been working in that gig that she loved, the coaching that she loved. And I frequently see her on Instagram and the reels that she creates, all very creative, because she has found the heart of her longings and the heart of her creativity, and she gets to play in her life. She does get to hear her heart sing. So this is someone who worked long term with all the tools, emotional resetting, as well as using them to release the limiting beliefs and strategy. So the point of this third section, from one point of view, is to dissolve the wall, the trauma parts built around your heart. Remember, trauma parts are protective parts. They are defense. They are created for your survival. And they want to protect your heart from further hurt. So, in order to have access to your heart in a clear way, its wisdom and all the ways it's connected, we need to dissolve that wall and heal the trauma parts. Layers and layers of trauma parts that constitute this wall around the heart. That's what I believe is the course to claiming your power, because the power is in your heart. I want to bring Rumi in with that because this quotation speaks to this point. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So I think we all recognize that love is very important for each of us. And while many of us consciously try to find that in relationships, in romantic relationships and partnerships, what Rumi is saying, to find the love that you really want, you need to find the barriers And the barriers, from my point of view, are all the trauma parts, the self-limiting beliefs and strategies that you've created that is walling your heart. And another quotation comes from my last spiritual teacher, Miranda McPherson. This is the quote that brings the point home to me. Deepen in your being through the practice of ego relaxation, being present, open, and undefended with all parts of your experience. So she believes that ego gets in the way of being present because ego uses a thinking mind to distract you. Have you noticed that? When you try to be still and present, your mind takes off, monkey mind, and distracts you. Ego doesn't want you to be open and curious as you were as a young child and undefended. I remember sitting with her when she said, the goal of spiritual practice is an undefended heart. And that is what this third section is, to talk about what creates an undefended heart and why you would want to move to an undefended heart. The undefended heart, it's where you know yourself, not as a small self, but self with a capital S, or as spirit, the divinity that we want, that we seek, that I sought, as you heard from my story. In the undefended heart, you can connect with your inner wisdom. Rather than trying to find the wisdom out there in the world, you have wisdom within, because within is your original spirit, your essence, that is connected to spirit source with love. And that's all we need to live well. This photo I have is a depiction of the breaking up of the heart to come to the purity of the heart within. So, in your healed heart, you will be who you were before the first pain. You will know that your essence is love. And you'll know your soul has a purpose here. And that you can live from your heart, not your wounds and not your intellect, because your heart knows. I love the idea that the best teachers, the best books, the best podcasts, all that I do here in presentation is not to give you wisdom or teach you something, but to remind you of the wisdom you already have. Don't you have that experience when you hear something that strikes you? Oh, yes. That's because you're remembering your wisdom. So here's a point in the original presentation where I asked for takeaways. And I appreciate, even now, how you might send me what you've learned, an aha that you have, or a fresh perspective that you experience. And definitely, if you have more possibilities for yourself than you can have seen up to this point, you have hope. Here is Lao Tzu. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. 2 days of presentation. using anger as the focal point to attune you to how your heart can be your guide. From that to the point of seeing that when you heal your heart, heal the inner child wounds, you have the capacity to reach into your heart or be connected to your inner wisdom because your heart has the answers. Your heart knows who you are, and it definitely knows what you want. So I hope this quotation can provide you with inspiration. It does for me. Here's another. Your heart knows the way. Run in that direction. So for those of you who have been listening to your intellect, which I had did for most of my life, I encourage you to turn in the direction of the heart, your heart, because your heart knows the way, and run in that direction. And to move in that direction, I would love to chat with you about what are your obstacles, what you've tried, and to see if I can help you gain some clarity about where you are and how you might get to where you want to be. So I encourage you, let's chat. I'm leaving the screen up for a bit so you can copy this URL, which is https://calendly.com/NUE/discovery-session. Let's spend 20, 30 minutes to become further acquainted. In the earlier video, which I am going to edit and delete parts which contain personal information, together, I had wonderful participants. As I mentioned at the beginning of this recording, we were hacked on Zoom and all kinds of disturbing false speech came through. And that's why I took the time to re-record. And I love those who stayed to the end. And I'd like to get to know you better, to see what worked in these presentations so I can improve. And as I said before, learn more about your situation and how you might be struggling and how I might bring some clarity into that situation. So I hope you have this link, and I look forward to seeing you. I intend to have this ready by Saturday, today, when I've re-recorded, and I will have available slots on Monday. So I look forward to seeing you on my calendar. And we began with how much sacredness there is in gratitude. So I want to end here in saying thank you, thank you, thank you for being curious and open to listen to this presentation and to take in what works for you, what makes sense to you, what brings aha to you, that touches upon some wisdom that you already have, but being obscured a lot by the inner child trauma parts. So, once again, thank you.